Hello Year 8, welcome to English. This is Mrs Oxborough. I'm going to be taking you through the next few weeks worth of work looking at our topic of love poetry. You should have received copies of all of the poems that we're going to be studying over the next few weeks, and alongside that the fact book, which has the information and facts that you should be aiming to learn alongside all of these poems. Before we get started today, can you make sure that you've got the following equipment so that you can complete the tasks as we go through? You're going to need a pen and a pencil and a highlighter. So I just want to start today with a little bit of a knowledge check. These are all terms that you should have covered before in English. What I would like you to do is to write those 4 terms down: a metaphor, personification, simile, enjambment. Next to each of them, I'd like you to have a go at recalling what each of those techniques does. Can you write a definition down? Pause the video here and have a go at this task. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at that task. Let's have a look at the answers. So a metaphor suggests that one thing is another thing. For example, it might say his hair is black coal. Second one, personification, is an inanimate object that is given human-like qualities. So an object such as the sun smiled. A simile is a comparison with 2 items where you would use like or as. For example, the wind howled like a dog. And the final one, this might have been a bit trickier, is enjambment. This is the continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line or couplet or stanza, specifically used in poetry. So as an example, I'm feeling rather sleepy, but I really don't know why. So you can see that the sentence there carries on onto the second line. Give yourself a mark for each. Did you get 4 out of 4? Okay, let's carry on then and start to look at our focus poem for today. So you should have Cosy Apologia in front of you. What I'd like you to do is take a few moments now to read the poem to yourself. You can either do this reading aloud or read it in your head. Alternatively, if you find that a bit tricky, you can go to this audio version of the poem and have someone read it aloud to you. Pause the video here and read the poem to yourself. Okay, so hopefully you've had a good read through of the poem and have got an idea of the feel of it and a bit more knowledge of the poem. So let's start just with a little bit of context so that we understand a bit more. So Cosy Apologia is a modern love poem. It was written by Rita Dove in 2003. The poem is written as Rita Dove waits for the arrival of a hurricane, a powerful storm that hit the USA in 1999, so a few years before she wrote the actual poem. The storm was referred to as Big Bad Floyd. While waiting for the storm to hit, the speaker in the poem takes refuge at home and she daydreams about her partner and her past relationships. Dove was married to a fellow poet called Fred Veblen, who the poem appears to be addressed to. It begins, "For Fred." So let's have a look now and start to make a few notes and analyse the poem. What I'm going to do, I've taken each stanza of the poem and gone through and made notes. I'll talk us through those. What I'd like you to do as we go, with your pen, with your highlighter, as you might do in class as normal, go through and highlight and make notes so that you've got a full annotated poem at the end of this lesson. Okay, let's make a start. So the poem begins, "For Fred, I could pick anything and think of you." Has a personal address at the beginning of the poem, is clearly addressed to her husband. It's written in the first person narrative because she says I, which gives it a autobiographical tone. She's talking about herself, about her life. It's a very personal opening to the poem. This lamp, the wind still rain, the glossy blue, my pen exudes, drying matte upon the page. So here we have a real kind of intimate style. She's describing how the smallest item, any sort of normal object sparks thoughts of her husband. It gives us this idea that she's kind of besotted with him, that she's thinking about him all the time. It's a very honest style, and it's almost as though she's confiding in the reader. It continues, I could choose any hero, any cause or age, and sure as shooting arrows to the heart, astride a dappled mare, legs braced as far apart as standing in silver stirrups will allow. You'll be with furrowed brow and chainmail glinting to set me free, one eye smiling, the other firm upon the enemy. So here we've got imagery of a hero. She's describing this hero in his chainmail, like a knight in shining armour, if you will, across his dappled mare, sitting atop a horse, is the image that she is creating for us here. There's a suggestion that maybe she wants to be rescued from this sort of ordinary life. Maybe she wants a bit more excitement. But in that final line of the stanza where she says, one eye smiling, suggests that it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference. She's being a little bit cheeky, that maybe she wants a bit more excitement in her life, but actually she is quite content. So on to the second stanza. This postmodern age is all business, compact discs and faxes, a do it now and take no risks event. So it begins with the speaker making quite an abrupt change. It goes from that sort of daydream imagery of the knight in shining armour, brings us back to real life with some modern imagery, this list of business and compact discs and faxes. There's a use here of enjambment. So remember we looked at that technique right at the start. So enjambment is where the line runs over onto the next line. So we've got a do it now and take no risks event. So emphasis on the word event brings us back to the present and possibly alerts us to this arriving storm and what's happening. And she continues to talk about the storm. Today a hurricane is nudging up the coast, oddly male, big bad Floyd, who brings a host of daydreams, awkward reminiscences of teenage crushes on worthless boys whose only talent was to kiss you senseless. They all had sissy names, Marcel, Percy, Dewey, were thin as licorice and as chewy, sweet with a dark and hollow centre, Floyd's. So we've got her reminiscing here, remembering past boyfriends and relationships. She's thinking about who they were and actually that they weren't all that exciting. It's kind of just that distant memory. There's a use of a simile here, where thin as licorice and as chewy, sweet with a dark and hollow centre. So there's that comparison with the previous boyfriends and the kissing. She's comparing it to licorice and sweets, isn't she? So let's carry on then. So you can see the final word in that stanza is again use of enjambment. It's bringing us back from that daydream of those previous boyfriends that she's listed and talked about back to reality and what's happening now. Takes us back to the storm and her focus. Cussing up a storm, you're bunkered in your eyrie, I'm perched in mine. Twin desks, computers, hardwood floors. We're content but fall short of the divine. So at the start here, this word cussing, we've got a bit of a dual meaning here. So it can mean to swear, to cuss, or it could be to destroy something. In this instance, she's more than likely talking about the storm, so it's going to have a lot of damage and a lot of effect on the surrounding area. This imagery here, this idea of being bunkered up, they're safe in their home. This word eyrie here as a term for an eagle's nest. She's creating the idea that they're safe from the storm. It goes on to list a few normal objects. It could be to highlight their ordinary life and their relationship. She says the words, we're content. She's happy, she's in love with her husband. But she says, but falls short of the divine. So maybe it is missing something. Maybe there is a little spark missing. Maybe she wants a bit more romance when she talked previously about the knight in shining armour, for example. Still, it's embarrassing, this happiness. Who's satisfied simply with what's good for us? When has the ordinary ever been news? And yet, because nothing else will do to keep me from my melancholy, call it blues, I fill this stolen time with you. So the poem ends and she reiterates that she is happy, she is content. The relationship might not be divine, it might be ordinary, but she's happy and she knows what is good for her. Okay, so that's the end of our analysis of the poem. If you need to pause here just to make a few more notes or to continue your highlighting and making your annotations, then do that now. So I'd like to just quickly go through with you and look at the rhyming pattern of the poem. The first stanza has a regular rhyme pattern, but in the second stanza the rhyme becomes a bit more chaotic, which could reflect those sort of turbulent relationships of the past or even the coming storm. A new rhyme pattern emerges in the final stanza, which can reflect the order and the calm of her life with Fred. And we know, we said previously, that she's happy and she's content, so that rhyming pattern reflects that. What I'd like you to have a go at now is to see if you can use your highlighter or a labelling system that you might have used previously, sort of the A, B, C style, if you know that one, if you've been taught that one before. Go through and note the changing rhyme pattern throughout the poem. Do that now and then we'll come back and have a look at it together. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at doing that, whichever way you prefer. So stanza 1, if you were using the letter labelling system, you may have come up with this pattern here. So A, A, B, B, C, C, D, D, E, E. So it's using a familiar style. It's a typical rhyming pattern that you might expect. She's got sort of common rhymes, words like page and age, you and blue. Those are quite simple to follow. In the second stanza, the pattern changes. So we go from A, B, B, C, D, C, E, E, D. So the pattern changes halfway through the stanza. This highlights some disruption, the coming storm, possibly her daydream about previous relationships, but it jolts the reader into recognizing that something has changed within the poem. In stanza 3, we go to a different rhyming pattern, A, B, C, C, D, E, D, E. So we've got alternate rhyming couplets. This again is more of a familiar sounding style to a poem, creates more of a sense of ease for the reader. Now, just want to end with a bit of a question and a task for you. So, how does Rita Dove present the idea of love in her poem Cosy Apologia? What I'd like you to do is take a good 10 minutes to attempt to answer this poem. Now, I've put a couple of pointers here if you need a bit of a suggestion of how to sort of structure paragraphs and those sorts of things. So you might start, Rita Dove presents the idea of love as, and then you might make a suggestion that it's romantic, that it's ordinary, that it's changing. Then you need to find some evidence. So in the quote, put your quote in there, she suggests that relationship with her husband is, and explain further the quote you found. Then say, this reflects the idea that love is, and sum up your ideas. Have a go at that answer.